Tonight Lim Dian's retirement party was being held by the guild. Because Lim was only a B-rank hunter, the party wasn't big. It was basically him drinking with a few friends and receiving some gifts. However, he was still happy because he had all the money he saved up after working for 20 years and a few buildings under his name. After the party, he made his way back home to one of the buildings and passed out on his bed. While sleeping, he dreamt about his retirement. It was looking glorious and all he had to do now was live the rest of his life in peace. Well, that's what he thought, but when he opened his eyes in the morning, he was in a strange apartment. Lim became depressed after realizing the apartment was his study dorm he used to live in 20 years ago. He took out his phone to confirm the date. His suspicions were correct. It was the year 2018. He threw the phone into the wall, angered about the fact he regressed right after his retirement. He held his head in dismay, questioning what he did wrong to deserve this. In his agony, he noticed a watch that Jungcheol, his buddy hunter, gave him, but questioned why he still had it even though he regressed. He recalled Jungcheol explaining the rumors surrounding the watch. Jungcheol says the watch was a rare item, a relic of the Byron continent's legendary mage Tihidal. However, at the time Lim didn't believe him. He started playing around with the watch, questioning if he regressed because of it. Before he fell asleep, he messed around with the watch, but nothing interesting happened at the time. Suddenly, his neighbor knocked on his door. The neighbor asked why he was being so loud and demanded he come outside. Lim had forgotten he lived next to the apartment owner's son, who looks like he was part of a gang. Every night the owner's son would host parties with loud music, and before Lim awakened he always stole money from him. The owner's son angrily asked why Lim was pretending not to be home. He asked if he should break the door down instead. Thinking about what the owner's son did to him in the past was really starting to get under Lim's skin. He opened the door and the owner's son asked him why he took so long. Lim said nothing and smiled at the owner's son. The bastard was wearing pretty high-quality clothing. His jacket was made from a monster's leather. The owner's son says he is getting psychological damage because of all the noise Lim was making. He was thinking of calling the cops, but he didn't want to stain the records of someone so young. So if Lim gives him money or something of value, he would forget about the psychological damage he caused him. He had been eyeing Lim's watch. He reached for it, saying the watch would do, but smacked his hand away and punched him. While the owner's son was still confused, he grabbed his face and headbutted him. The son fell to the ground and Lim asked why a grown-ass adult like him was stealing from someone younger than him. He took the owner's son's jacket, saying it wouldn't make up for everything he stole for him, but it would be a nice start. As he walked away, the owner's son begged him to give the jacket back. He says it was a really expensive item. Lim ignored him and quickly left the apartment. As he walked, he began to wonder why he regressed to the year 2018. 2018 was the year he had an accident at a construction site and awakened. He had a hard time all his life because of the knee injury he suffered back then, so it was nice to not feel the knee pain now. He decided to start his awakening process on his own. He managed mana for 20 years in the past, so awakening on his own wasn't a problem. He closed his eyes and began feeling the mana around him. He directed the mana through his entire body, completing the awakening process. Using the mana, he checked his condition. His body was lacking nutrition and he completely lost all of his muscles in his previous life. He began to wonder how he was able to work in his past life with his body like this. His stomach started growling, so he decided to think about this later and find something to eat first. He made his way through the city trying to find a place to eat, but everywhere he turned was under construction. Humans hadn't developed the technology back then to detect the appearance of small gates, and there would be massive losses to small and large businesses because of the sudden appearances of these small gates. And as he was walking through the city, one of these small gates suddenly appeared. The streets were suddenly in chaos, with people looking for loved ones and others asking for the cops. Lim stared at the gate, questioning why a gate suddenly appeared when he was thinking about gates. The red-spotted wild wolf came out of the gate. The red wolf is a species of monster that lives in groups. They have sharp teeth and claws that they use to rip their prey apart. While running away, an old man noticed Lim staring at the gate. The old man stopped and told Lim he should be running. Their attention was turned to a man who was calling out to his daughter. Lim narrates that he regressed in a shitty period in time. He took off his backpack that had his necessities and looked for a weapon. He found a crowbar, and after picking it up he headed towards the gate to look for the man's daughter. He heard the cries of a little girl and began making his way to that location. The little girl was surrounded by 3 red-spotted wolves. One of the wolves was about to pounce on the scared child, but Lim arrived in time to save the child. He told the girl to go to her father, and he charged in at the monsters. He quickly defeated the 3 monsters, but 2 more appeared. Lim was having a hard time fighting because of hunger, and he questioned why more wolves were coming. However, after thinking about how the wolves looked chubby and delicious, his mouth began to drool, and the wolves were scared. In the past he was able to make delicious meals with wolf's meat, and since he was hungry he wanted to get things done quickly. He charged at the wolves cautiously because even though he is now in a young and somewhat healthy body, it was still 20 years ago and his body wouldn't move like when he was 40. However, one difference is his knees were feeling great. One of the wolves saw that Lim was distracted and attacked, but Lim quickly moved out of the way of the attack and landed a kick on the wolf's head. The other wolf tried to attack Lim from behind, but he dodged the attack. There was no end to the wolves and Lim no longer had the crowbar to use as a weapon. He took the watch from his wrist and used it as a brace knuckle and punched the wolf. To his surprise, the watch was quite sturdy. With a weapon now in hand, he looked around and counted how many wolves were left for him to defeat. There were about 10 wolves left, making him nervous. Luckily, the police arrived, and after the police arrived they quickly dealt with the rest of the wolves. Lim became disappointed because the jacket he stole got ripped in the battle. A police officer called out to Lim and said he wanted to ask him a few questions. The police officer thanked Lim for defending the citizens and asked for his name and guild he was affiliated with so they could get him his reward. Lim told the officer his name and says he isn't affiliated with a guild yet. He told the officer he wasn't registered as a hunter either because he awakened a few hours ago, and since he couldn't receive the reward yet he gave the officer his number. The officer thanked Lim for his cooperation. Lim told the officer he was going now since he is busy. The officer tried to stop Lim because he had something to tell him, but Lim quickly dashed off. Lim thought his name and number would be enough for others to contact him if needed. News of Lim quickly spread through the higher networks of the guilds. Later at a dinner, a waiter brought Lim the beef cheek soup he ordered, and while enjoying the food he received a call. He knew the call was a guild trying to recruit him, but it came quicker than he expected. But he should have expected this because this was around the time when guilds were going crazy to recruit hunters. On top of that, news of what he did during the gate has probably spread already. He checked his phone and saw he had 98 notifications. 2 years after the first gate opened is when hunters began to replace police and regular military, and guilds began coming to power. When a new hunter awakens, the guilds would have a tight competition to recruit them, and Lim suddenly appeared in the middle of all the chaos. There are a ton of hunters who chose to become criminals with their power instead of serving the public. Civilians didn't have a manual for how to react when a monster appeared, so hunters were in high demand. Around this time is also when the 6 disasters started moving. Lim no longer had a choice. If he wanted to live out his retirement peacefully, he needed to use his knowledge about the future, and if he worked hard he could retire within 3 years. Lim was trying to enjoy his meal, but the messages kept coming in. A man approached him and asked if he was Lim Dian. Lim told him he was and asked the man who he was. The man introduced himself as Kim Gilsu, the manager of the Royal Family Guild. Kim says he really wanted to meet Lim after seeing the videos of him defeating the wolves. He was about to ask him to sign a contract with the Royal Guild, but they were interrupted by a woman who came running into the diner asking for Lim. She also says Lim's video was impressive and that he looked even cooler in person. Before she could bring up a contract, she was interrupted by the manager from the Warrior Guild. More guild recruits came into the diner, causing a commotion and ruining the other customers' dining experience. Lim asked the recruiters to quiet down, and says if any of them continued to cause a commotion he wouldn't even think about joining their guild. He asked them if they could go somewhere else to talk. The guild recruiters decided it would be best to rent out the diner so they and Lim could talk. After the other customers finished their meals, Lim and the guild recruiters sat down. He says he doesn't want to waste their time and asked how high they were willing to go for the contract signing bonus. Kim suggested that each guild recruiter have a one-on-one talk with Lim since the contract has a non-disclosure clause. Lim asked Kim if he was the recruiter for the Royal Family Guild. Kim replied yes and began to explain that the Royal Family Guild was very prestigious, but before he could finish explaining, Lim asked him to leave. Kim looked confused, so Lim told him he had no plans of signing with the Royal Family Guild. Lim didn't see the point in signing with the Royal Family Guild when they were on the verge of merging with another guild soon. He turned to the other recruiters and asked how much the rest of them were willing to offer, and a guild recruiter suddenly shouted, "We will offer you 1 billion. Another recruiter says 1.1 billion and another says 1.2 billion. The number kept getting higher, so Lim remained silent, waiting to see how much the Black Hound would offer. That was the guild he signed with in his previous life. Baek Youngwi, the White House guild manager, says they would give him 2 billion, a base salary, incentives, loot, commissions, and the best conditions that no other guild can provide. The White House Guild is a guild that formed recently, but with his knowledge of the future, Lim knows in 1 year the White House Guild will become one of the top 3 guilds in Korea. He thought that's the reason why they are able to expend so much resources. Lim asked all the other recruiters except Baek to leave, but they could leave a business card in case he changed his mind. After the other recruiters left, Baek says she watched Lim's fight with the wolves many times before she got to the diner. She thought he fought with great skills for someone who recently awakened. Lim knows this was an elegant way of her saying she did a background check on him. Beak says she is certain Lim is either a genius or he gained an ability that gives him the upper hand in a fight. She laid the contract on the table and told Lim the White House Guild would like to nurture him. Getting recruited by the White House Guild was something Lim couldn't even think about in his previous life. But he needed more so he could retire early, so he asked Beak if he could add a few more clauses to the contract. Beak said he could and watched as Lim updated the contract. After he finished, Beak laughed and said Lim was a comedian. Lim told her he wasn't joking. Beak went over the clauses that Lim added to the contract and read them out loud. Lim only wanted to work for 4 days a week, and he wanted the right to refuse a mission that takes a long time to complete. Beak suddenly got serious and said the clauses must be a joke. Lim didn't back down and says those were his conditions. Beak asked him why he was so confident in himself. Lim ignored her question and said in return he would make sure the White House Guild doesn't regret signing a contract with him. Beak got up from the table and says she would see Lim in a few days with the revised contract. As she was leaving, she winked at him and said next time they should skip the coffee and have a drink together. However, Lim wasn't falling for her flirts. He knows Beak is the guildmaster's daughter. Since he had the guild situation settled, it was time for him to get registered as a hunter. Inside the Disaster Management Center, in the Hunters Support Department, the receptionist asked Lim if he planned on getting registered right now. She told him the person in charge isn't in the office at the moment, and she was new so she couldn't do it on her own. Lim says he was in a hurry and asked if they could work something out. The receptionist says she would try contacting her superior first. This made Lim happy because the person in charge was someone he wanted to avoid. The receptionist called her superior and informed him Lim was trying to get registered. Her superior allowed it. The receptionist took Lim to the testing room, and on the way she asked if he had any special abilities. Lim says he is the type of hunter that uses physical strengthening, but he doesn't have a special ability. But this was a lie. This era doesn't have a magical power meter yet, so they could only find out about his abilities and true power if he told them. But in this life he doesn't want anyone to know his special ability. She brought him into a room and asked him to pick up a barbell that weighed 405 pounds. Lim physically enhanced his body and picked up the weight with ease. The receptionist was shocked and said Lim really did awaken. Lim turned and asked her if she thought he was lying. She apologizes and says some people come in claiming to have awakened, but it ended up being a waste of time. They moved on to the next test and a while later they finished. She handed him the temporary hunter's certificate and says they would contact Lim when the official certificate was ready. Lim grabbed the certificate and started heading for the door. As he walked through the door, he ran into the person in charge. He put his head down and passed by him quietly. The hunter's support team's Ju Sangwook was someone Lim didn't see the good in interacting with, so he made plans to never come back again. However, even though he didn't want to be involved with Ju was interested in him. After leaving the Disaster Management Center, Lim went to the Contamination Control Area. The Contamination Control Area has been completely sealed off, ruined, and abandoned because of monsters, but things changed when the Dimensional Gate opened up. A year from now, a gate would open to connect Earth to Gaia, a fantasy world where swords and magic exist. In Korea, only one gate is expected to open, and it was in the Contamination Control Area. Lim planned on buying the Contamination Control Area once he gets his signing bonus from the White House Guild, because it will make him a fortune once the Dimensional Gate opens. He started to unpack his things so he could prepare to hunt monsters. However, he suddenly heard someone speaking in the Gaia continent's language. He used his ability Stealth and began making his way to where it was coming from. The Stealth skill hides his presence by assimilating him into his surroundings. In his previous life, this ability was why he had to go on risky missions like scouting, spying, and assassinations. However, he swore to never go through that again. He heard the voice asking for someone not to get close, so Lim wondered if the person was being chased. But before he could come to conclusions, he needed to check out what was happening with his own eyes. The person speaking in Gaia language was surrounded by 3 men. The little girl says she warned the men and they brought this upon themselves. The little girl started casting a fireball spell, surprising the men. However, instead of being scared, the men thought it was awesome, because they could sell the girl for a higher price. After arriving, Lim stood a distance away so he wouldn't be noticed. He wondered if the little girl was a dimensional refugee and questioned how she got herself in this situation. One of the men with a snake tattoo on his arm asked the girl to come with them and they would buy her something delicious to eat. Lim recognized the tattoo. It was the mark of the criminal group called Red Snake. However, he didn't know those bastards were involved in human trafficking too. He didn't have enough mana left, so he got closer and deactivated the stealth skill. Then he took out his knife and killed the man with the tattoo. And while the other men were still confused, he quickly killed them too. He spoke in the language of Gaia and asked the little girl if she was from the Gaia continent. He said he wanted to ask her a question. The little girl was surprised and asked Lim how he is able to speak her language. Before Lim could respond, the little girl's stomach started growling. He asked the little girl if she liked eating meat. After the little girl finished eating, she thanked Lim for saving her and giving her something to eat. She says she would repay his kindness someday. Lim asked her how she was able to cross the dimensional gate alone, but the little girl didn't answer. So he asked her where she was before coming to the dimensional gate. The little girl says she didn't want to talk about it, so Lim asked her for her age, but again she refused to give him an answer. He continued to ask her questions, but in the end he couldn't find out anything about the girl. The little girl asked Lim to help her. She says she was weak and knew nothing about this strange place, however she could use fire. She activated her ability to show Lim, but the fire quickly went out and she said she didn't have full control over her fire ability yet. Lim told her he was too busy to babysit a kid, and he had no reason to help her. However, he said she could stay with him for 1 month. In that month he would teach her their language, some basic knowledge, and in return she would do chores and follow his orders. The little girl happily agreed, making Lim regret his decision already. He handed her some dishes and said her stay with him wouldn't be free. The little girl took the dishes and introduced herself as Lily. She was hoping her and Lim would get along. Lily looked around, questioning where she was supposed to wash the dishes Lim handed to her. Lim pointed to where she was supposed to wash the dishes. After Lily left, Lim began to question why her name sounded so familiar. He recalled the monster who would burn half of Seoul to a crisp 10 years from now. This person's name was Lily too, and she was from the Gaia continent with red hair the color of flames and the ability to use fire. This person would become one of the 6 disasters, the Fire Witch. Lily looked similar to this person. In fact, they were basically identical. Lim knows that the Fire Witch was kidnapped by a criminal organization when she was young and raised as a disaster. So if Lily was the Fire Witch, then he likely ended up stopping one of the disasters from happening. The next day he and Lily went to the market. Lily looked around at all the food stands and asked Lim where they were. Lim told her they were at the market and said he plans on making a special dinner for the both of them. Lily became excited to see what Lim would make, and a few minutes later Lim brought them to a meat stand and asked the seller if he had any raptor tenderloins. The seller told Lim they had plenty. Lim then narrates that after the opening of the first dimensional gate, the food crisis caused people to start eating monster meat. Right now there was a lot of monster meat, but people aren't willing to eat the meat from the monsters. But that was only because they didn't know the functions of the meat yet. The meat and other monster ingredients contain mana, which helps hunter cultivate their mana. And in the future it would become impossible to buy ingredients infused with mana. Lim proceeded to buy as much of the monster meat as possible, and because Lily was with him the seller gave him plenty extra. As they were walking back to the contamination control area, they stopped by a clothing store and Lim asked Lily to pick out some clothes she would want to wear. Lily picked out a cute outfit and showed it to Lim. Lim looked at the price tag of the dress and picked out a tracksuit for Lily instead. Lim told Lily that it wouldn't feel right if she was wearing good clothes in the contaminated control area. Later that night Lim cooked the special meal he was talking about by mixing all the meats he bought from the market. He called it Lim's signature mana nutrition-rich meal. Lily stared at the food and asked Lim if the food is editable. Lim didn't know how to respond and says healthy foods are meant to look like this. Lily began to smell something other than what Lim made. She asked Lim as he was smelling it too. Lim told her he got chicken for them to eat after his masterpiece, but it wouldn't hurt if he opened the chicken box now. Lily ate one of the drumsticks, instantly falling in love with it. She says from now on chicken will be the only thing she eats. Lim grabbed the box of chicken and told Lily to eat his masterpiece too, or he would mix the chicken with the food he made. Lily begged him not to do it and said she would eat his food too. Lim poured himself some of the soup and said he didn't understand why Lily was being so picky. It wasn't like the soup he made was completely inedible. But in reality he struggled to eat the soup as well. It was just barely at the level that he wouldn't die from eating it. Lim continued to eat the soup while thinking about all of the delicacies he would be enjoying right now if he didn't regress. After they finished, Lim asked Lily to do the dishes. He asked her not to disturb him. Lim sat down and started using the Great Sea Mind technique. This technique boosts one's magical power and it was flexible on how to use it. He trained his mana using the technique before he regressed, but to his surprise his mana was increasing faster than he expected. Before he regressed, no matter what effort he put into this mind technique, it never worked this well. He began to wonder if it was because of the food and his young age. As he continued to meditate, he could feel his danshan increasing vastly. At this rate, if he continued to eat mana-rich food and meditate with the Great Sea Mind technique, he would be stronger than when he regressed. A while later he finished his meditation, and his stomach was growling. Lily, who had finished the dishes, heard Lim's stomach and asked him if he wanted to get some chicken. However, instead of buying chicken, Lim made more of his soup, making Lily upset. 2 days later, Lim was impressed with the results he managed to achieve in that short amount of time. At the level he was, he could go for a treasure hunt. He received a phone call from Beak, and after he picked up, she says she was disappointed. She thought Lim was going to call her first. She asked if he wasn't concerned about her well-being. Lim had totally forgotten Beak existed and told her he was busy. He asked her if she finished adding the clauses he mentioned to the contract. Beak remained silent, and judging from her silence, Lim concluded she ran into some problems. Beak told Lim that she convinced the guild leader, but he wanted Lim to prove his skills before he hired him. Lim asked Beak if the guild leader wanted him to take a test. Beak apologized, saying she also thinks he doesn't need to take a test, but there's nothing she could do. She told him if he waited a few more days she could find another way. Lim quickly told her he wanted to take the test, however he had one condition. The next day Lim and Lily made their way to the White House Guild's HQ, where they met with Beak, who asked about Lily. Lim told Beak that Lily is his half-sister. He told Beak that Lily lived abroad so her Korean isn't great, and he would have to bring her around with him for the meantime. Lily thought Beak was beautiful. She asked Lim who Beak was, and Lim told her Beak is someone who would give them money. In Lily's mind, money equaled chicken, so she concluded that Beak was a good person. Beak told Lim that the guild wouldn't mind having Lily around. She says the White House Guild doesn't meddle in the lives of hunters. Beak brought them into the guild leader's office, where they were greeted by the White House Guild leader Changsu. Changsu reaches forth his hand for a handshake and says the White House Guild wanted to reach out to Lim earlier, but certain things had come up. Lim shook his hand and says he didn't mind because he also had some personal issues. Changsu says he heard Lim wanted double the contract sum if he passed the White House Guild's test, but he was beginning to question if Lim was really worth that much. Changsu released his aura. Lim was sure Changsu didn't know any martial arts or magic, but his aura was still overwhelming. It's no wonder he is the guild leader, and if it was some other hunter, Changsu's intimidation tactics would have worked. But it wouldn't work on him. Lim started releasing his aura and told Changsu he would prove his worth. This surprised Changsu. Changsu quickly turned to Beak and asked her to rewrite the contract. Beak told him if they rewrite the signing contract with the previous terms, Lim might reject it. Changsu told Beak not to worry and asked her to triple the contract signing bonus. He also told her to add a clause that says Lim would be paid 20 billion as a signing bonus if he passed all of the tests. This shocked Lim because the offer went from 2 billion to 20 billion. He told Changsu that he enjoyed his leadership and says he is ready for the test. Later at the White House Guild training grounds, Beak told Lim that to pass the test he has to win in sparring matches against 3 members of the White House Guild. And since it was a test, she asked him to be careful. She introduced Hwan Janghak and said he would be Lim's first opponent. Beak asked Lim if he would like to choose a weapon for the match. Lim showed her his watch and said it would be enough. This irritated Hwan. From the looks of it, Lim only awakened recently, but yet he was already being arrogant. Changsu started the match, but before attacking, Hwan whispered saying he would cripple Lim. Lim took a defensive stance, questioning why Hwan wasn't attacking. Before he regressed, he read about Hwan from a magazine. Hwan's trait is speed. He has the ability to get faster the more he moves without stopping, which is why he wanted to win quickly. Hwan ran directly at Lim and began running circles around him. Lim thought Hwan would attack him directly. This was not what he was expecting. The White House Guild members watched the battle with lack of anticipation. They were amazed as they watched their guild members speed up. They all came to the conclusion that Hwan would win this battle. Changsu's eyes were fixated on the battle, and Beak watched nervously. Hwan had gotten so fast that all Lim could see were his after images. He told Lim not to worry because he would end the battle quickly. Using his momentum, he attacked Lim. However, before he could land his attack, Lim was able to attack with the watch. As Hwan fell to the ground, Lim wondered if he knew the momentum from his speed could be redirected at him. Lim turned to Changsu and asked for his next opponent. Changsu approached Lim, saying he had amazing eyes to be able to keep up with Hwan's speed. Lim thanked him and asked if Hwan would be okay. Changsu said Hwan didn't suffer any life-threatening injuries, and the medical staff is by his side right now, so he'll be good after a few days' rest. Changsu thanked Lim and says if he didn't hold back, Hwan's life might have been in danger. Lim was surprised that Changsu knew he was concealing his strength. If he really wanted to, he could have easily made Hwan's head fly off. Lim looked up at the guild members who were watching him. After defeating Hwan, his signing bonus is now at 6 billion and that money is guaranteed. He also now meets the requirements to join the guild. He smiled at them, hoping the rest of the test would be just as fun. Lily noticed his face and asked why he was smiling like a pervert. Lim told her he was trying to intimidate the other guild members. They quickly made their way to the second test location, which was the artificial forest training grounds, where Beak explained that the first unit of the White House Guild has 6 teams containing 5 people, and below them is the second division. She pointed to his next opponent and says he is the first unit's 6 team's captain. Yang Di-hoon introduced himself and said he hoped he and Lim could have a good match. He reached forth his hand hoping to get a handshake. However, Lim realized that Yang was among the guild members earlier and was directing killing intent at him. Lim didn't shake his hand. Instead, he put up his fist and said he was ready. Yang grabbed his sword and also said he was ready. With both parties ready, Changsu rang the bell signaling the start of the spar, and Lim quickly charged in and attacked Yang. Yang blocked the attack with his shield and countered with his sword. Lim dodged the attack but left himself in a compromising position. Yang thought this was his golden opportunity and attacked Lim with his shield. However, Lim disappeared and appeared behind him. Lim used the skill Eagle's Claw. Yang was able to block that attack with his shield in time, but he was now beginning to wonder if Lim learned martial arts before he awakened. He countered Lim's attack with his sword, but Lim was able to dodge the attack and send him flying. Lim was starting to get annoyed because Yang's physical endurance was no joke. Yang got up from Lim's attack and praised him for being strong. Lim didn't know what to do. He could end the fight, but he planned on hiding his power until the last test. But the sly Changsu put him in a position where he would have to lay everything out. Yang told Lim that after the fight he will request he be assigned to his team. He felt like him and Lim would be great partners. Lim asked him when he agreed to join his team, and Yang told him the winner could make a request. Yang asked Changsu if this wasn't what he said. Changsu said yes and told Lim that this was part of the contract. Lim said since it was already this way, if he won he wanted to become a team leader. The other guild members who were watching started laughing and said Lim was talking nonsense. Lim doubled down and told Changsu that if he won he wanted to run his own team that would be filled with people hired by him. And he wanted to have the freedom to carry out missions independently. At first he was going to wait and prove his skills before he proposed this, but there is no point in waiting now if he could get the team leader position along with the 20 billion signing bonus. Changsu agreed to Lim's proposition, but said if he lost he would half the signing bonus and double the contract period, and Lim verbally agreed to the new contract. Yang called out to Lim and asked if he really thought he could win. Lim laughed and asked Yang if he was jealous because Beek was showing interest in him. Lim said Yang was directing killing intent at him earlier because Beek wanted him, and Yang wanted to act all high and mighty by crushing him in this match. Lim knows that in the near future Yang was going to cause a huge controversy. He went through all sorts of humiliation and ultimately was kicked out of the White House Guild. He called Yang a pervert, which was his last straw. Yang told him he would show him what a future team leader is made of and activated his rage mode. Lim recognized this skill. It's a skill that activates when the user loses all reasoning. It raises the user's mana level and boosts their physical abilities. With his new physical boost, Yang charged at Lim at great speeds. However, Lim remained calm. He allowed Yang to get closer and activated the lightning fist technique. And before he punched Yang, he told him that for his sake he should block the attack with his shield. However, his advice didn't matter because his attack broke through Yang's shield and sent his unconscious body flying through the woods. Yang's defeat surprised the other White House Guild members. Lim fell to the floor. His entire body was aching. He couldn't believe he lost so much strength after just one lightning fist attack. However, there is nothing he could do, so for now he did a temporary fix using the mind technique. After all, he would have to use lightning fist again in the next fight. After he was finished, he made his way back where Beek congratulated him for becoming the 7th team leader. Lim liked the sound of being called the 7th team leader very much. The contract stated that passing the second test would guarantee him $1 billion as a yearly pay, and $6 billion as a signing bonus. His new goal was getting the 20 billion signing bonus. Since he was prepared, he asked Beek who he would be facing next. Changsu spoke, saying that would be him. Changsu says he didn't think Lim would actually win against Yang, so he now has no choice but to make himself be Lim's last test. Lim looked at Changsu, questioning if he really had to fight this monster. Lim gave up on the third test, surprising Changsu. Changsu told Lim he would give him $20 billion if he lasted for just 5 minutes. He saw from Lim's face that he wasn't interested. So he told Lim if he lasted for just 3 minutes he would give him $3 billion. However, Lim refused, saying he couldn't fight anymore. And Beek angrily told her father it was time for them to finalize the contract. Beek took Lim back to her office where he signed the contract. After he signed it, she told him the terms of the contract were ridiculous. Lim told her he knew and said he hoped they would have a good time working together. She said likewise and asked Lim how he planned on hiring members for his team. Lim told her he doesn't know yet but says he plans on scouting them out one by one. He asked Beek if he could sign a contract with someone right now. She told him it was possible but asked who he wanted to hire. He said it was someone who's not affiliated with any guild yet and is extremely talented, and called Lily's name. Lily turned to Lim and asked why he called. Lim asked her to make a fireball as big as she could. However, she refused, saying she was hungry. Lim told her if she did it he would give her 3 chicken legs. She quickly got out of her chair and asked Lim to keep his promise. She activated a giant fireball for her 3 chicken legs. Beek was surprised that Lily had supernatural powers too. Lim says her powers is why he wanted to put her on his team right away. Lim was impressed that Lily's fire wasn't burning the surrounding area. It means she's controlling her ability perfectly. She was controlling a fireball of that size even though he only taught her for a few days. There was no longer a doubt in his mind that Lily was one of the disasters. He asked Beak if they could negotiate Lily's contract payments right now. He was asking for $3 billion to start. But before they could start, Lily told them to wait and asked Lim for the chicken he promised. Lim had no choice but to go out and quickly buy Lily her chicken, and when he got back, him and Beak finished Lily's contract. Lily was now a member of Team 7 and her contract payment was $5 billion. Beak took Lim and Lily around the White House Guild building, showing them the different facilities the guild had to offer. She explained that the guild also hired regular people to help operate the training rooms, living spaces, operation control rooms, and other facilities. However, the whole time Lim didn't look impressed, so she asked why he wasn't surprised by the guild's cutting-edge technology and facilities. Lim responded saying it takes a lot to surprise him. However, in reality, the facilities Beak was showing him were old compared to the ones in the future. Beak brought him to the equipment development workshop, which Lim thought was impressive. She says that if there's any equipment Lim would want, the guild could make it within a week. Lim says he wouldn't need weapons because he had someone to make it for him. But in the meantime, he wanted to take a few things to use. He picked up 2 daggers that he thought would last him a while, and told Beak he would be using them for the time being. He put the daggers in a dagger holster and asked Beak if she was done showing him around the guild building. Beak said since it was Lim's first day, they would let him go after his meeting with the president. At that moment, Changsu, who had been looking for Lim and Beak, entered the equipment development workshop. He told Lim that there was an urgent message from the operation control room, but every team was already out on the field. He apologized to Lim, saying he didn't want to do this to him on his first day working for the guild, and asked if Lim would be able to go to the site. Lim was disappointed. He thought he would get off work early today since it was his first day. Changsu told him he wouldn't have asked if it wasn't an emergency, and Lim disappointedly asked for the location. They equipped Lim with an earpiece before he left, and after he arrived at the location, Beak asked how the site looked. Lim told her that there is a gate 10 meters above the ground, and giant snails are coming out in large quantities, and the other guild's hunters were struggling against the snails. It was a shit show. Lim told Beak that most of the monsters had been taken care of, and asked if he really had to step in. Beak informed him that the guild needed a sample of the new monsters, and asked him to safely secure 3 of the snails alive. Lim said okay and told her he will begin shortly. Lim knows that the snails are monsters that are going to be avoided in the future. The name of the monster is Giant Smelly Snail. The monsters themselves are weak, but they explode on impact and let out a bad stench. The smell was bothering Lily, and she asked Lim why he didn't look bothered by the smell. Lim says he blocked his sense of smell with mana, and he asked Lily if she wanted to learn. Lily was surprised. She never knew mana had so many uses. She began trying to block her sense of smell with mana, and Lim told her she wouldn't be able to do it right away. However, she quickly turned to him with an excited look on her face, saying it worked. Lim was surprised. He didn't even give her proper instructions, yet she was able to do it on her first try. He began to wonder how talented Lily is. He told Lily to stay by the car while he captured 3 snails so they could return quickly. Looking around, Lim noticed that no one had been able to capture a proper sample. He concluded that the other hunters were struggling because the snails exploded with the slightest bit of mana. But attacking it without mana doesn't do enough damage. He quickly rushed towards the gate looking for a snail he could capture. He came across a snail up a tree. Lim approached the tree and kicked it down, and as the snail fell to the ground, he used Tai Chi to knock it unconscious. Lily, who was on standby watching Lim, saw the move he just used and asked him to teach her. Lim told her if she wanted to learn, she would have to pay him 100 billion. Lily asked him how much chicken 100 billion could buy. Lim didn't respond. He was starting to get annoyed by Lily's talent. She was quickly stealing all of his moves. A few minutes later, Lim called into the control room and informed Beak that he collected all 3 specimens and is handing them to the collection team. Beak was shocked, and she questioned how Lim was able to get his mission done so quickly. She asked him if he was nervous about his first mission, or if he had any questions. Lim told her he had nothing to be nervous about because when they arrived, the monsters were almost gone. As she was giving him some final instructions, they were interrupted by a couple of hunters who asked Lim if he was with the White House Guild. They hadn't seen Lim's face before, so they asked him if he was a newbie. Lim told them he was, which shocked them. They saw a strap around Lim's arm and questioned if he was a team leader, but that didn't make sense because the White House Guild had enough people to make team leader instead of a newbie. Jang Xiaokan, leader of Team 5 and Lim's superior in his past life, asked if the move he used earlier was his ability. Lim was tired of making small talk with the hunters. He told them to stop blabbering and tell him what they wanted. Jang says because the snails kept exploding, his team hasn't been able to collect a proper sample. Lim didn't see how this was his problem and asked if they wanted him to give them the sample he collected. However, he said he didn't want to. Jang was starting to get irritated and he asked Lim why he was talking to him so informally. He began to approach Lim but was quickly stopped by the leader of Team 3 for the Warrior Guild, who told Jang to use his words instead of violence. The leader of Team 5 for the Royal Family Guild approached Lim asking him not to be harsh to his future friends. He told Lim that they would be seeing each other often in the field, so it will be nice if they were nice to each other. In the control room, Beak told Lim not to give them the samples and says she would make an official complaint to the other guilds later. Lim experienced this kind of stuff a lot in his previous life. He knows that if he doesn't give the hunters the bag, they would likely attack him for it. He threw the bag on the floor and told the hunters to take it. Beak complained to Lim, telling him he shouldn't have done that. The hunters laughed, saying Lim should have done this from the beginning. Lim smiled. He approached the bag and sat on it, saying the hunters could take the bag if they were able to forcibly take it from him. Lim's word angered the hunters and they said they tried to resolve things with words, but Lim brought this on himself. Jang cut in front of the other two hunters, saying he wanted to have a go at Lim first. Lim whispered to Lily. He asked her to light everything around here on fire when he gave the signal. Lily asked Lim if he wanted her to burn the other hunters alive. Seeing the disaster side of Lily made Lim nervous, and he told her not to burn them alive because things would get annoying if they killed the hunters. Jang shouted at Lim to get up so he could educate him, as someone who's been a hunter longer than he had. Their attention was quickly turned to the gate because of the screams of the other hunters. The gate was raging with mana and they were questioning why it changed all of a sudden. A giant snail the size of a building came out of the gate, and Jang and the other team leaders quickly ordered their team members to prepare for combat. They surrounded the giant snail and told Lim not to join the battle. They said if he interfered and happened to be hit by their attacks, they wouldn't take responsibility. Lim grabbed his bag and told them he wouldn't interfere. He told Lily to follow him so they could put the bag in the control team's car. The other hunters were struggling to fight off the giant snail. Its strength was higher than they expected, and its tentacles were making it hard to approach the monster's body. After putting his samples in the back of the control team's car, Lim helped Lily put her bag in the car as well. Beak informed him that he needs to fight the monster. She said he should get at least one hidden so the White House Guild could make a claim of ownership for some of the loot. Lim smiled and told her not to worry. He told her that the other hunters would never be able to defeat the giant snail like that. Jang and the other captains told the tanks to block while the rest of the team took care of the tentacles. The tankers in front informed them that the monster's mucus was melting their shields. Jang pulled the tankers out and told the others to prepare to attack from afar. At the control team's car, Lily asked Lim if he was just going to watch the other hunters suffer. Lim told her he was and said he needed them to leave. One of the tankers, Wang Guho of the Black Hound Guild, nicknamed the Pushover King, was slowing the others down. Jang told him to move quicker or they would leave him behind. The hunters' weapons had been melted and they were being chased by the giant snail. Jang quickly ordered everyone to retreat. However, because of his ability, Wang was caught by the monster's tentacles. The monster was about to eat Wang. Luckily, Lim stepped in. He told Wang that he was using his ability incorrectly and said if he wanted to learn how to use it properly, he should come find him later. Lim called Lily and told her they should get started. Lily activated her ability, creating a wall of fire between them and the other hunters. Beak told Lim that he was acting rashly. She says a support team would arrive in 5 minutes, so if he waited, he wouldn't have to take on the monster with just Lily. Lim said if he waits for those 5 minutes, the support teams for the other guilds would arrive too. He wanted to monopolize the loot for the White House Guild. It was hard for her to continue to observe Lim with the drone because of the fire, so she quickly evacuated the drone team. However, before the drone team evacuated, she told him that monopolizing the rewards wasn't more important than his life. Lim told her not to worry and said he would make sure to return safely. Beak told him that if he gets hurt by the monster, he will be in big trouble. The giant snail was an unusual monster that was recorded in an illustration book. Every hunter had to remember the strategy to defeat this strange monster in case of an emergency. The giant snail had one major weakness, which was fire, and after Lily used her fire ability, he could see that the snail was moving slower. He rushed at the monster, asking Lily to cover him. The snail attacked him with its tentacles. Lim knows that if he attacked the tentacles, they would recover quickly. That's why he needs Lily's help. He dodged the monster's tentacles and gave the signal to Lily. Lily shot fireballs at the snail's tentacles, burning them. They continued with this strategy until they amputated most of the snail's tentacles. Once most of its tentacles were amputated, the snail hid inside its shell and began recovering its body, and as the illustration book said, even the entrance was closed off. Lily approached Lim asking what they should do now, and Lim said they have to use what he brought from the car and showed her some nails. The bastard shell is incredibly hard, so they have to target the softest part of the outer shell. He took a nail and hammered it into the snail's shell. On the outer ring of the fire, the other hunters were hearing the sound of Lim hammering the nails into the snail's shell. They all were wondering what Lin was doing. Wang watched eagerly, questioning if what Lim told him earlier was true. A while later, Lim finished hammering the nails in the spot he wanted. He stepped back, saying it's time for the last step. In the illustration book it said once all the nail work was done, a hunter should target the center of the shell. Lim activated his strongest attack, Lightning Fist, and attacked the center of the snail's shell. There was some recoil from his attack, but he managed to break through. The snail was out of its shell, but Lim lost control of his body and fell to the ground. During the test, he thought using the Lightning Fist 2 times a day would be too much, but he never expected this much recoil. His body was too weak to use any proper techniques. Lily quickly ran to his body, asking if he was okay. She kicked him over and asked if he got electrocuted. Lim angrily told her she is supposed to help him in situations like this. She helped him up, asking if he wanted her to get rid of the wall of fire now. Lim told her to keep it up for a bit longer. They worked hard for the kill, so they had to collect their loot. She helped bring him to the snail, and Lim began cutting it into little pieces to carry. He told her the snail's meat is very soft and has a lot of nutrition. Lily was excited. She expected Lim to make a delicious meal once they were done. Lim smiled menacingly. Lily didn't know she was helping him collect nutritious meat for Mana stew. He continued to collect as much meat from the snail as he could. But he received word from Bang Woohyok, the leader of Team 2 of the White House Guild, that they were going to enter the Wall of Fire to help out. Lim told them to wait, saying they should enter after he released the Wall of Fire. He began to cut the snail apart quickly, looking for the most important loot. Bang asked Lim if it wasn't difficult to face the snail alone. He told Lim not to push himself too much since it was his first day. Lim found what he was looking for, and he told Lily to release the Wall of Fire. Bang and his team quickly approached Lim, asking if he caught the snail by himself. Lim put on an act, saying he fought with his life on the line and he got lucky. However, Jang and the other team leaders from earlier thought what Lim was saying was nonsense. Jang questioned how Lim was able to defeat the snail by himself when every other guild's team was struggling against its tentacles. Lim continued his act and asked Bang if he could leave the cleanup to him. Bang told Lim he had nothing to worry about and said his team would take over. Bang told Lim if his injuries were that severe, then he should go to the guild and receive treatment. Lim recalled what Beak told him and says he would think about his other options first. Lim and Lily made their way back to the contamination control area, and later that night Lily told Lim she was hungry and tired. Lim told Lily she did well today and plated boxes of chicken in front of her. He told her to eat as much as she wanted today. Lily pinched herself. She couldn't believe she wasn't dreaming. She quickly grabbed 2 drumsticks and said she wants to catch a giant snail again. Lim poured himself a glass of beer, and after drinking half the glass he says, "Fuck, this taste is what I live for." Lily noticed that Lim says fuck every time they ate something, so she also said fuck out loud. This surprised Lim. He heard that adults shouldn't speak recklessly in front of kids, but he never had to worry about that before. He told Lily that fuck was a bad word, so she shouldn't be using it. Lily asked Lim why she shouldn't use it when he was using it. Lim told her because it's a bad word, and she asked him why he was using a bad word while they were eating chicken. The two of them continued to argue through the night. The next day Lim began his morning by using the Great Sea Mind technique, and after using the technique for a while his head began to hurt. However, this is to be expected after he spent his evening drinking. The Great Sea Mind technique worked like an emergency aid, so he shouldn't push himself in the meantime. A while later Lim finally answered Beak's call. She angrily asked him why he hadn't been picking up the phone. Lim told her his muscles were too sore because he pushed himself too hard yesterday. Beak apologized and asked Lim if he was feeling better now. He says he was feeling better than yesterday and asked Beak if she needed something. Beak told him she was planning to take over the hiring of Team 7's members, but wanted to hear his opinion first. It takes a lot of people to run a team. There was the filming equipment support, medical team who are deployed on site, operators who relay the situation from the control room, and the secretaries who handle the team's schedule and paperwork. The members greatly affect the performance of a team. Lim told Beak he didn't mind her taking over, and he asked her to choose people she thought would be suitable. After all, Beak had an eye for people. The compliment made Beak happy, and she asked Lim if he wanted to continue the conversation over lunch. Lim didn't know how to respond, so he ignored her comment. He told Beak that there was a hunter he wanted to recruit. He asked Beak if she could reach out to Wang from the Black Hound Guild. After his talk with Beak, Lim received a call from Changsu, who told him to take 3 days off. Lim told Changsu that he should be fine to return to work, however Changsu refused. He told Lim that Beak reported everything to him and said Lim shouldn't be eager to work yet because his team couldn't carry out missions until he recruited other members. Although he wanted to return quickly, Lim didn't mind taking a few days off. Changsu told Lim to rest well since he is the future of the White House Guild. Changsu asked Lim to have a sparring match with him after he had rested fully. Lim quickly hung up on him, saying he would do his best to rest. Lily approached Lim asking if there was any chicken she could eat. Lim smiled menacingly and says he would make her something even tastier than chicken. Unlike his last meal, this is made from fresh and delicious ingredients, with a soft texture from the snail meat. And even the core from the snail's heart, it was specially made Manhwa health food. The soup's name was the snail meat soup from hell. He told Lily that he was done, and said even though the color looks weird, it's something healthy for the both of them. Lily acted like she was still full from eating all that chicken before. Lim says it was a shame. He told her even though the soup looked repulsive, it was really delicious and filled with snail meat. He told her since she isn't hungry he would eat all of it and grabbed the pot of soup. Lily stopped him saying she thinks she had room for a little bit. Lim smiled menacingly and said you definitely said you weren't eating. A while later they finished the snail meat soup from hell, but Lily almost died. She says Lim ruined all the happiness she had yesterday. Lim told her not to be heartbroken and said the world is full of many tasty foods she could enjoy. But after the trick he pulled, Lily couldn't trust Lim anymore. Lim told her they were going to have pork belly for dinner. She asked what pork belly was, and he says it's a meat more expensive than chicken. Lily says pork belly might make life worth living. Hearing Lily talk, Lim began to wonder where she was learning to say things like this. Lim said for them to be able to eat tasty food, they will need to work on digestion first. He asked Lily to follow him and said they are going on a treasure hunt. The monsters that survived during the first gate have formed their own territories, and among them is an orc tribe. The orc tribe had a relic from a different dimension that they were guarding. Lim observed the relic from the outskirts of the orc tribe's territory. Before he regressed, an expedition team found the orc's relic and took it. But this time he will snatch it first and use it to the fullest. From what he recalled in his previous life, the orc tribe had around 200 orcs. Thanks to the snail's core his body was able to recover, but there's still too many orcs for him to handle. Lim told Lily that he was going inside the orcs camp first, and said she should use her fire ability when he sends a signal. Lily looked around questioning what Lim planned to use for the signal. Lim pointed to a side of the orc camp wall and told Lily to light up the entrance with fire if one of the torches fell after he entered the camp. He told her if she gets distracted and misses his signal they will lose the treasure and wouldn't be able to enjoy pork belly for dinner. Both Lily and Lim activated the stealth skill. Lily stayed hidden on a cliff while Lim entered the orc's camp. Unless there were stronger enemies in the camp there shouldn't be anything that could detect him, so he went close to the statue to gather more information. He learned that there were about 10 orcs guarding the statue, and if it was just 10 orcs he might be able to do it alone. He took out his daggers getting ready to go in, but stopped after seeing the mutant orc tribe leader. In the past the orc tribe leader showed a ridiculous amount of power against the expedition team. He was dangerous, so Lim went through with his first plan. He picked up a rock and threw it at one of the torches, knocking it down. Lily noticed the signal and blocked the exit with fire. The orc tribe leader signaled for the other orcs to put out the fire, so Lim planned on using this opportunity to destroy the statue. However, the orc tribe leader suddenly appeared behind him. Lim moved away questioning if the orc tribe leader noticed him, so he quickly ran out of the orc camp. Lily saw Lim running and asked if he got caught. Lim turned to her and said she should be running too. After running for a while the orcs lost them. Lily looked around and said she knew where they were. Lim asked her if she had been here before. She pointed out a cave saying that's where she came from after crossing the gate. She told Lim that more men with the same tattoos as the ones who cornered her were in the cave too. They tried to catch her so she ran away. Lim began to wonder if the Red Snake group was using the cave as their hideout. He questioned why they decided to settle so close to the orc tribe. He patted Lily on the head and said he was proud of her. If he used this opportunity right, he could reap great rewards. He told Lily that they should drop by her old friend. However, Lily refused, saying she didn't want to enter the cave. Lim told her to hide in the bushes. He handed her a walkie-talkie and told her to push one of the buttons if something happens. He activated his stealth skill and entered the cave. He knows that the Red Snake isn't a small group. Judging from the security, he guessed this was one of their hideouts, but he really couldn't understand why they chose a place next to the orc tribe. He made his way into a room and saw 2 men working with lab equipment. He noticed one of the men holding a white powder and questioned if it was serpent. Serpent is a drug made from plants of another world. Its powerful addictiveness caused countless people to die or become disabled in his previous life. The police spent several years investigating the drug, but no progress was made. Lim couldn't believe the origin of the drug was in this cave. While some of the men worked with the lab equipment, others with guns ordered them to hurry up or else they would be killed. Lim made his way through the lab doing a head count. There were about 100 Red Snake members armed with guns, and about 30 workers who manufacture the drug. A bag of serpent is worth about 50 grand, and from the looks of it there was about $100 billion worth of serpent in this hideout. Lim's attention was drawn to a man in suit talking to one of the guards. The businessman was shouting at the guard for missing the daily quota. The guard explained that they were behind because one of the workers died. Lim was happy he came across the cave before serpent became a problem like in his previous life. He turned off the power in the cave, and in the confusion he grabbed the supply of serpent. He made his way outside the cave and called out to Lily. Lily sprung from the bushes and asked Lim if it was over. Lim told Lily it was just beginning and asked her to get in the box of serpent. Lily got in the box, but before they left they were noticed by the guards. The guards opened fire and chased after Lim. Lim led the guards to the orc camp and told Lily to get out of the box. After she jumped out, Lim threw the box of serpent into the orcs' camp. The guards turned to their commander asking what they should do now. He told them that dealing with the orc has become their #1 priority. Lim and Lily activated the stealth skill and moved away from the scene. The guards opened fire on the orcs, shooting some down. However, their bullets were not able to penetrate the skin of the orc tribe leader. The orc tribe leader approached the guards one by one, cutting them down. On a cliff, Lily and Lim observed the battle. Lily asked Lim if he knows when the battle will end and said she's hungry. Lim told her to wait. It wasn't often things go this smoothly for him. A while later the battle was almost over and Lim was questioning if he should start cleaning up. The orc tribe leader defeated the commander of the guard and let out a battle cry to signal to the other orcs of his victorious battle. Lim appeared behind the orc tribe leader and thanked him for taking care of his trash. Then he killed the orc tribe leader. The other orcs were frozen in fear. Now that the chieftain had been dealt with, the rest weren't much trouble. In fear of Lim, the other orcs ran away. Lim didn't chase after them because he knows that without their chieftain they all will die soon. He went back to the statue and began breaking it apart. A few minutes later he found the Guardian's bracelet, the relic he was looking for. The bracelet is a relic that can boost the wearer's condition and help them with recovery. If mana is inputted into the bracelet, it can also cast a protective barrier, and when the two bracelets are together the effects increase. Like the information says, the bracelets adjust to the wearer's wrist, meaning it wouldn't be difficult for Lim to hide it. It would also help him recover mana. The relic was living up to its name. Lim called Lily over and he gave her one of the bracelets. He told her that the bracelets had protective magic on it, and it would protect her in case he isn't there. When Lily gets stronger he wouldn't have to worry about protecting her, but for now she is still weak. So the bracelet was perfect for her, and it also had location tracking, which Lim thought was perfect because he had a safety net. Lim told Lily they could leave after he took a look at the cave one more time. Lily was shocked and she asked Lim why he wanted to enter the cave again. Lim says he would tell her later and asked her to burn the entire orc village down. Lily asked Lim if he would take her to eat if she burnt the village down. Lim told her no, but said the food would taste better. With newfound motivation, Lily activated a giant fireball spell, burning the entire village down in one attack. Lim realized that he would be in trouble if he hadn't introduced Lily to chicken. Lim entered the cave again, but this time without his stealth skill. The guards that were left behind quickly noticed him and opened fire. Lim decided to test out his new relic. He activated a shield and instructed Lily to pay close attention. He told her that this is the special ability of the bracelet, and said if she gets used to using it she would be able to change the shape of the shield. Lily activated the shield in one try and threw it at a group of guards, shocking Lim. Seeing their power, one of the guards approached Lim and knelt before him and Lily, asking to be spared, saying he would tell them everything he knows about the organization. Lim smiled menacingly and told the guard he didn't need information about the organization and asked him to bring him to the safes. 1 hour later, Lim and Lily exited the cave with a bag full of goodies, and Lily lit the cave on fire. As Lim expected of a secret organization hideout, there were a lot of useful things for him to take. Before they left the cave, Lim told Lily to trap the guards in a shield. He told her to release the shield after the explosions. Lily asked Lim what they should do if the guards tried to run away. Lim told her not to worry and said the guards would have nowhere to go even if they ran away. There were approximately 35 remaining Red Snake members. They're desperate to live in their own way, so Lim didn't plan to kill them. However, he wouldn't make things comfortable for them either, since they were contributing to the creation of Serpent. Lim called out to one of the guards saying, "Suradiok, follow me." The guard, who had been beaten up earlier for being talkative, asked Lim why he had to be a Suradiok. Lim told the guard that he reminded him of Suradiok and asked him to follow Lily back to the contamination control area. He told the other guards to turn themselves in at the control post. The guards complained, asking Lim if he wasn't going to release them too. Lim told them to shut up. He asked them if they thought they would get a pass from what they were doing, and if they continued to complain he would hit them until they wished they turned themselves in. Later at the control post, the policemen were confused because the guards were turning themselves in for manufacturing Serpent. Lim was watching from afar. The guards will be taken to the police station where they would likely make a statement about him and Lily. However, this is what he hoped for because he wanted the statements to reach someone. He left the station quickly so he could go buy Lily something delicious. Meanwhile, Lily and Suradiok arrived at the tent. Lily began throwing a tantrum saying she was hungry. Suradiok started crying saying he doesn't understand what Lily is saying. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then hit the like button.